It was pouring rain, the kind that makes you question why you even left the house. The kind that soaks through your shoes and your hope. Jenna stood at the curb, heart pounding, 35 minutes late to a blind date she almost didn't show up for. Her nerves were frayed, her makeup was ruined, and she was ready to turn around when a man stood up from a corner table, smiled at her through the foggy window, and mouthed the words, "I knew you'd come that moment." It changed her life. But not for the reasons you'd expect. Hey there, welcome to Kindness in Action, where real stories remind us that a little kindness can change everything. If this story already has your heart leaning in, go ahead and hit subscribe, give it a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, and now, let's dive into Jenna's story, a journey that proves sometimes the right people walk into our lives when we least expect them, and show us just how far a simple act of kindness can reach. Jenna wasn't the type to go on blind dates. She was 32, worked long hours as a pediatric nurse in Boston, and the emotional weight of her job rarely left room for romance. Her friends had begged her to try something new, to open her heart again after a painful breakup 2 years prior. So, with much hesitation, she agreed to meet Daniel, a friend of a friend, for coffee on a rainy Thursday evening. That night, everything went wrong. Her shift at the hospital ran over. A child coded. A mother wept in her arms. Jenna stayed late to make sure the rest of the family was supported. She almost canceled the date. What was the point? She felt emotionally wrecked, physically exhausted, and completely unworthy of meeting someone new, but something small nudged her to go anyway. Maybe it was her best friend's voice in her head. Maybe it was hope. So she rushed home, threw on something dry, and hailed a cab through the storm. When she finally arrived at the little cafe, drenched and disheveled, she spotted a tall man sitting alone at a table by the window. He stood the moment she walked in, smiling as if she'd just lit up the whole room. "You're here," he said warmly. "I knew you'd come." She apologized for being so late, rambling about work and rain and how she almost didn't make it. But Daniel simply shook his head and offered her his dry scarf. "No need to apologize. I just hoped you were okay." That kindness, so simple, so unexpected, hit her like a wave. It wasn't just that he'd waited. It was that he cared why she was late. They sat for hours, sipping lukewarm coffee, swapping stories. She found out he wasn't just Daniel, the friend of a friend. He was Daniel Hart, CEO of a mid-sized tech company that had recently made headlines for offering 6 months paid parental leave, not just for moms, but for dads and adoptive parents too. "I believe companies should lead with compassion," he said. Jenna was stunned. He didn't talk about profit margins or power moves. He talked about people, how they're what matter most in business, in life, in everything. At the end of the night, he walked her to a cab and said, "No pressure. But I'd like to see you again. Even if it's just to talk." She smiled. "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, Daniel showed up in her world in the kindest, most unexpected ways. He sent lunch to her hospital during her double shift. Not flowers, lunch. Sandwiches for the whole pediatric floor, with a note that said, "For the heroes who don't wear capes." One day, after a particularly rough shift involving a case of child abuse, Jenna broke down crying on the phone with him. She didn't want to be a burden. She said she understood if it was too much. Daniel's voice was steady. "You're never too much. You matter." Their relationship grew not from grand gestures, but from quiet, consistent kindness, and one night, months later, Jenna sat beside Daniel at a charity event he'd organized, raising money for children's hospitals. He introduced her not as his date, but as his inspiration. "She reminded me," he said into the microphone, "that the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more kindness. The kind that shows up late in the rain, but shows up anyway." The crowd clapped, and Jenna cried. But the story doesn't end there. Jenna and Daniel started a foundation together, Hearts Forward, that provides emotional support and therapy for frontline healthcare workers. Jenna used her experiences to help nurses like her avoid burnout. Daniel used his resources to make sure no one doing good in the world felt alone in it, all because one rainy night, she chose to show up and he chose to wait. It's easy to think kindness is just a nice idea, something soft, something small. But kindness? Kindness is powerful. It changes the direction of lives. It creates space for healing, for love, for second chances. Maybe today you're like Jenna, tired, worn out, unsure if it's worth showing up. Or maybe you're like Daniel, waiting patiently, quietly rooting for someone to walk through the door. Either way, remember this: kindness is never wasted. And sometimes, it shows up late but right on time. Thanks for watching Kindness in Action. If this story touched your heart, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share in the comments what's one act of kindness that changed your life. Until next time, keep showing up for each other, even in the rain.